Hello, everyone. It looks like that I am live right now, and what a beautiful experience because I haven't gone live for quite a long time. I used to go live absolutely every week on the Recover from HA support group, and then my practice got busy, university got busy, and here I am right now, finally doing the first live that I've done in a long time in this recovery group. So for all of you that haven't met me yet, I'm Claudia. I'm a nutrition and dietetic clinician, and I am the founder of this group. I am the founder of the Restore the Hormones community and the Period Comeback Protocol. And I've helped at this point more than 500 women to get pregnant and more than 700 women to get the period back in the past few years. So that's very exciting results, very rewarding. And even now in the Restore the Hormones community, we have seen incredible results, like women getting the period back after 15, 21 years, 9 years. And that's an incredible achievement, and I compliment all of them. But today we're here for different reasons, and we're here to discuss why your period hasn't come back yet, even though you may have done all the things that I've been telling you to do. So, this is the question that I get the most. Why isn't my period back yet? So let's say that you're eating more, you're exercising less, you know your hormones have been out of whack, but there is still no signs of a bleed. And I know how frustrating it is because I lived it on my body. You start doubting yourself, you're wondering if you're missing something, and you're wondering more than anything else if you're just too broken. But here is the thing, it's not sometimes only about doing more, it's about fixing what's underneath. So let me explain what's going on with an analogy that I use with my clients. So imagine your hormones, they're like a glass of water. You're trying to fill the glass, and you're trying to fill the glass with more food, supplements, rest, and self care. You're doing all the right things. But no matter how much you pour in, it just keeps on leaking. And that's because the glass has holes in the bottom. And unless you fix those leaks, there is no amount of adding more that is gonna fill up your glass. And this is exactly what I see in the women that I work with, especially those recovering from missing periods that haven't had periods for more than 3 years and have properly started recovering in the past 4 months. I'm gonna give you just a quick couple of examples. So the first one that comes to mind is one client that was doing everything right. So she was eating more, she reduced her workouts, she was doing daily journaling, but she still had no periods after 4 months. And what we found is that she was still waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, not so much to exercise, but simply she didn't get out of the habit of having an alarm clock, even though she didn't have to go to work until 9 o'clock in the morning. She was fasting for the first 2 hours of the day, and she was spending all her nights just scrolling through her phone and really comparing herself to her younger version and to other people on the internet. And she was even comparing herself to men that have a completely different biology and they're also so very different, hormonally speaking. So her cortisol was spiking early in the morning, the melatonin was suppressed, and she wasn't getting the safety signals that her brain needed to recover the period. And this is a very common scenario that I see in my clinic and in the period comeback protocol. Another woman that come to mind, she cut back training, she added more carbs in, but she was still very much afraid of eating breakfast before working out and only save the calories for the end of the day. So she had the biggest meal of the day only at the end of the day, and she was really skimping through lunch and having very small and safe protein loaded snacks during the day. So her insulin and leptin weren't stable, and her circadian rhythm was completely out of sync because you can imagine, like, if you have such a big dinner before going to sleep, obviously your sleep is going to be somewhat disrupted and you're going to have a blood sugar crash in the middle of the night. So these are the holes that I'm talking about. And these holes, they often go unnoticed. You see, we focus a lot on sex hormones. And when I mention sex hormones, I'm talking about estrogen, progesterone, luteinizing hormones, follicle stimulating hormones, because that's what shows up in the labs. But those are the results of deeper hormonal messages. So there are four core hormones, I call them the parent hormones, that have to be regulated first. The first one that you may have heard of is melatonin, the sleep hormones, the most potent antioxidants for our mitochondria. It controls the circadian rhythm and also the quality of our sleep. And the second one is cortisol. That's how your body responds to inflammation, which is why we need cortisol. And that's also how it responds to stress. So it's very normal to have spikes of cortisol as long as we go back to that stable level of cortisol production. Instead, when we are in a state of chronic stress, that's when cortisol is consistently high, then it changes and becomes high in the morning and at nighttime, and then all of a sudden it becomes flatline. And that's what we call burnout. Insulin is another big one because I don't know why I said she, but it's the hormones that is in charge to manage the blood sugar level and your energy availability. And leptin, which is the opposed to ghrelin, which is your hunger hormones, leptin is the satiety hormones, and it signals to your brain that you're nourished and safe. So when leptin is content, your hypothalamus is content. And if any of these are out of balance, your body will shut down reproduction. And that's not a way to punish you, but it's just a way to protect you. And obviously, you don't have to go through all these hormones and think, okay, how am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix that? That's what we do in the period comeback protocol. We take them into consideration when we start you on the treatment protocol, when we have every single call with you. So that's something that you really don't need to worry about, because the reality is that you cannot fix melatonin without fixing cortisol, insulin, and leptin at the same time. And that's also when all the other sex hormones, they're going to respond in the most beautiful way by giving you a proper bleed. So if your period isn't back yet and you're wondering what is wrong, here are the five most common reasons I see in practice. The first one is that you are under eating or mistiming your food. So, as you may have heard by now, it's not just about the calories. If it was only about eating 2,500 calories, you ladies will be also very sweet, right? Because at least you had a goal in mind, at least you had an aim, and once you reach that goal, that's it. Period comebacks. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. First of all, you need to ask yourself, are you eating consistently throughout the day, or are you saving calories, or are you delaying breakfast in the morning? Are you getting carbs earlier in the day to regulate cortisol and insulin? Because it's fair enough to have breakfast, but if you have a smoothie that is protein loaded with very little carbs, then LH is not going to have that signals that basically tells the body that, yes, okay, we have enough energy so that we can work. Also, are your meals balanced, or are you just snacking your way through recovery? And that's something that I see very often as well, especially if you come from a place of fasting and really restrictive diets. Maybe snacking is fine for you, but having proper meal and then adding snacks in, it's also very fearful. And then, are you eating enough carbs in general during the day, or are you favoring protein and fats? I had this beautiful woman. She joined the Restore the Hormones community only 5 months ago. She had been trying all that she could to get her period back on her own. She was working with a gynecologist, with an endocrinologist. No one was figuring out why she didn't have a period. And after our first session, after she sent me the diet diary, we quickly realized, okay, that's where the problem is for you. And I just pointed out for her, we rectify it. Within a month and a half, she got her first period after so many months without, and now she is beautifully pregnant. So late night big meals, skipping breakfast, relying on high fat, low carb snacks can all delay recovery. And please remember, 2,500 calories of cabbage is not the same of 2,500 calories of a very well balanced, nourishing meal. And this is why we start every woman in the period comeback protocol with a full dietary and exercise assessment, as we need to rectify the big holes from the let go. And then monthly, we have group call with nutritionists for the same reason. With I shouldn't say nutritionist, I should say our lovely in-house nutritionist, Stacey, exactly for the same reason. So she can actually spot those holes, and she can spot those holes as you progress in your recovery journey. So that you don't have to overthinking, you can just rely on someone else doing the hard work for you. And I wish that I had that when I went through my own recovery journey. It took me 5 years to find that person. And as soon as I found that help, bang, my period came back in 6 months, which sounds like a long time, but for someone that didn't have a period for years, it was just really a drop in the ocean. Reason number two of why you may not have your period back yet is that you're still over exercising, even if it's less than before. And I really need to underline this, even if it's less than before, because that's when I get the most pushbacks from women because they keep comparing themselves to the previous version, to their previous version, to their sicker version that they call their fitter version. The reality is that you cannot compare yourself with someone that was sick. And even though you looked fit and even though you had some cardio capacity, that does not mean that you are healthy. A full reproductive system, a full system in the body had completely shut down. If it wasn't the reproductive system and it was the cardiac system, you wouldn't be here anymore. It's just that women are fine not having a period and procrastinate their recovery. But the reality is that your body is telling you, I'm shutting down a system because you think that you're fit and healthy. But the reality is that this is your sickest version. So what does overtraining mean for some women? It can also mean walking faster for over an hour. If you're extremely sensitive, that slow walk in the morning before you get breakfast could also be a hormonal killer for some of you. It could be light strength training 4 or 5 times a week. So sometimes I ask women, so what do you do for exercise? And they're like, oh, nothing really. So I used to run, I used to go to the gym, and I used to do this and this and that. And I would just do YouTube exercises, very light strength training 5 times a week. And I'm like, well, that's still too much for someone that is in recovery. If you haven't got your period back after 4 months, then maybe it's a chance for you to really get honest with yourself. And instead of thinking, well, compared to my sicker version, I'm doing less, but I'm still doing a lot. And that's where you can ask yourself the very honest question, okay, what else can I do to really get my period back? Instead of finding a magic pill, instead of blaming other people, instead of looking for solutions that don't make sense right now. And please remember that if you stop the training as you did it in the past, you can always incorporate it back when your body's in a state of safety. Also, doing Pilates or yoga daily without true rest can also be triggering for the body because our body still needs to get rest, still needs a day where there is nothing planned, where it can kick back, just go to a cafe, just walk to the market, just do absolutely nothing. So even Pilates and yoga sometimes can be detrimental if done continuously without a break. So your nervous system doesn't care what type of movement it is. Obviously, from an energetic perspective, we need to take that in consideration because if you're running daily, then we definitely know that you is not the best thing in recovery because you need basically an extra couple of meals just to compensate the run. But your nervous system, it doesn't really care about the type of movement if your body is underfueled or inflamed. And sometimes even gentle movement can be a stressor. And I know that for some of you it's gonna feel like a slap in the face, but it's better to say it out loud instead of just tiptoeing around it. Reason number three of why you may not have your period back is that you're not managing hidden stress. And I'm not just talking about emotional stress, which absolutely matters, but also waking up early, poor sleep quality, digestive stress, always being bloated, rushing to the bathroom, doing 6 pools per day, suppressed emotions, perfectionism, even doing recovery perfectly can actually hinder the recovery journey, and overthinking recovering constantly. I see this in women that have worked on recovery for a long time and they start to think that they are the victim. So they start to control more, they start to control the recovery, they start to once again find solutions, look for advices, look for uh, things that they can support the fact that they are the victim. And they find reasons to believe that they are the unicorn and they forget to focus on the joy of living. So this overthinking, these ruminating thoughts, it's going to increase your cortisol level, is going to increase the stress within your body that is going to be perceived by the body as what it is, a stressor. But more than anything, this overthinking, these controlling behaviors, even when it comes to recovery, it really takes away the joy of life. All of this sends signals to your brain that, once again, you're not safe to ovulate because you're clearly under so much stress that having a baby right now would be an absolute killer for you. Reasons number four, there are some underlying conditions that has not been addressed. In some cases, it's not just hypothalamic amenorrhea, which is why I always say test, don't guess. There are some things that you may want to rule out, such as hypothyroidism, PCOS after hypothalamic amenorrhea, low iron and B12 and zinc that can sometimes impact regular cycles and ovulation, autoimmune issues, gut infections, histamine or mold issues, even though in those situations I don't see a very strong correlations between lack of a cycle and mold issues and histamine, but they can create that stressors and inflammatory states in the body that can actually lead to delayed ovulations, delayed periods, and also painful periods, and then obviously premature ovarian insufficiency, as also known as POI and perimenopause. If you have been consistent for 4 to 6 months and nothing is shifting, these are definitely worth checking, which is why we do consistent blood works in the period comeback protocol, because I always say to the lovely ladies, I want to make sure that nothing is left unsaid, that nothing is left undone, because I find that it's personally really good to work with what we got. So checking your cervix, checking your basal body temperature if it's not too triggering and not anxiety provoking, looking at your cervical mucus, looking at your poo quality or your sleep quality. But sometimes it's also very much needed to actually check what is happening and just run some blood work. And then I left the reason number five last because possibly, and just possibly, you haven't got your period back because you are lacking patience or you're lacking support. I say this so much love. Most women just give up too early or they try to do it all on their own while second guessing every step. Also, I know that you want your period back, but you cannot strangle your desire. And what do I mean by that? Think if your period was a partner. So if you are in a relationship and then daily you would check to see where your partner is multiple times a day, you will get really upset, even cry if your partner is not available. You would check with other people if how your partner is behaving is actually a good type of behavior or not such a good type of behavior. You will start thinking, okay, how can I really change my life to make sure that I let this partner in, and then you get anxious in the process. How would you think that that relationship is gonna end? Because that partner is not gonna feel safe and is not gonna come back home one night because it's gonna be like, too much. I cannot do this. So once again, you cannot strangle your desire. Even if it's the thing that you want the most, you cannot strangle it. And I hate when people say, oh, if you just relax, you're gonna get pregnant. Because that's untrue. Sometimes you really need to have a look at your hormones and see what's happening underneath so that you can do the proper work so then your body can actually get pregnant. Because unfortunately, infertility in 2025 is a big problem because of how the world is going and how our lifestyle looks like at the moment. Women have been mistreated for years and we are just paying the consequences of it. But it's also very true that sometimes when we finally let go of that desire, our body feels safe enough to let it happen. So it's just a balance between the two. And that's why I think that accountability is also so very powerful. And I'm the biggest fan of walking alongside women in this journey, not just to tell them what to eat, but to help them regulate the nervous system, feel safe in their bodies again, and to trust the process. And back at the beginning of the period comeback protocol, I used to do everything on my own. And now we even have the pleasure to have a wonderful support coach that is there for my women twice a month to check in with them. Not so much as a session, but just to ask them really, hey, how are you? So how would that feel for you to have a call twice a month with someone that is just there to listen to you for 20 dedicated minutes? I personally don't have that. And definitely didn't have that when I went through the recovery journey, because back at that time, even though I found the most beautiful professional, she didn't have a support team. So it was just a call with her and that's it. And then you were on your own for the whole month. And sometimes I feel that nowadays we take for granted all the goods that is available in our life. And some women, they really focus on the scarcity of what is not there, what is not available, of how much this is costing them in terms of money, life, time, and so on and so forth. But the reality is that there is so much goodness around us if we can just allow ourselves to see it. So if your period isn't back yet, don't just keep pouring more water into the glass. Look at the foundations, look at these holes. And if you need help sealing them, remember that you're not alone. This is what I do every day with my clients inside the period comeback protocol and the Restore the Hormones community. If you want to explore what working together might look like, just simply let me know. And if this video helped you, let me know in comments or share it with someone who might need it. Remember that your body wants to heal. We just have to listen to what it's trying to say. Thank you for being here.